I'm going to take some time today to talk about transportation network companies, and I'm going to try to go through these pretty quickly. I think that Virginia probably was one of the first jurisdictions in North America to actually come up with a comprehensive regulatory plan for the TNCs. And when this whole process started, because we had a stakeholder process, a legislative process, implementation process, but I really had no thought that we'd be able to get a set of regulations or law that would get agreed by our legislature and implemented. And you only have to give me a second to get used to all of this. We had no idea the TNCs were coming, and they pretty much set their sights on Virginia, and they'll set their sights on all jurisdictions. Bottom line is they came into Virginia, they set up, they started doing business. Once we found out from the taxi industry that they were here doing business, we told them you couldn't do it. The set of our laws does not allow you to do that, and pretty much try to stop us was the philosophy that they had. And in fact, I did try to stop them. When they came into Virginia, as I said, they said we are not a motor carrier. We are a technology company, and therefore, any regulatory scheme that you have for motor carrier do not apply to us. And really, their solution was sort of, okay, we're going to be here. If you want to change your law, that's fine, but we're going to continue to operate until you do so. And in fact, we got hit with sort of two different things at the same point. First of all, the legislature asked us to study this new business model and figure out what needed to be done in the law to change to accept the business model to be able to operate. But we also actually had them operating in Virginia illegally. And so we had both of those things sort of going at the same time. Now, I'll be honest with you, we reached out to them and said, come to the table, let's talk about it, let's figure out what you are doing, let's figure out what you want to do, and let's figure out if we can find a temporary solution and then get you to the table to talk about the permanent solution. Well, I can tell you that didn't happen because, again, we're the 2,000-pound gorilla. We've got a lot of money and just try to stop us. We have a lot of very enthusiastic users as well. So as Terry was kind enough to say, I'm a little competitive, and when someone says, no, you can't, it usually gets me to the point that, well, yeah, watch. And I remember exactly when this was. This was the Thursday before Memorial Day in May of 2014. I issued a cease and desist order. I said, Lyft, Uber, you're operating illegally. You need to stop. Well, two things were generated as a result of that, one positive, one not so positive. First of all, as I said, they had by the time they were in Virginia, they had established, particularly in the urban areas, obviously, they had established a very loyal customer base. And again, it's an app-based technology, so you can very easily communicate with these folks. So, like I said, issued the cease and desist letter on Thursday. Well, by Thursday night, all of a sudden I started seeing my email traffic picking up. And over the Memorial Day weekend, I got several thousand emails, some of which were a very nice sort of argument of why Uber should be allowed to operate in Virginia. Others, were calling me names and using combinations of words that I found very interesting and had never really actually seen before. I'm glad my mother has passed on because I would not want to have shared some of these emails with her. But I had fun with it because I answered every single one of them. And now, granted, I had a stock, a standard response that I could just, hit, copy, send. But there were some that I actually typed up individual, and I remember sitting in bed Saturday night of the Memorial Day weekend, and I'd hit my standard response, and then this person comes back with this. As a taxpayer, I can't believe I'm being treated this way, getting a standard stock response from a nameless bureaucrat. Well, then I said, well, actually, you're not getting a generated response. This is me, and I'm sitting in my bed right now instead of enjoying this weekend. And this person and I became pen pals. I mean, all throughout the process, because she then wrote back and said, now, as a taxpayer, let me say how impressed I am that that one of my employees is actually working through the weekend. The more positive reaction was, it actually got them to the table. It got the TNCs to finally sit down with us and say, okay, this is what we're about. This is what we want to do. Let's figure out how we can do that. And working with our Attorney General, working with our Governor, we were able to come up with a temporary operating authority to allow them to continue doing with what they were doing with a great deal more oversight as we then work towards the legislator. As I said, long term, we were required to pull all the stakeholders together and come up with some type of solution. And the stakeholders included the TNC companies, the drivers, taxi cab owners and drivers, other passenger types of services like limousine companies and charter buses, the insurance industry, local government, law enforcement, trial attorneys, the disabled community, the airports, other state agencies. Well, getting all of them in the room at the same time, because I will tell you, we have done a whole lot of stakeholder types of operations where we have studied an issue for our legislature and then reported some findings with some recommendations. And usually our SOP is, you get everyone in the room and you try to hammer out some type of agreement. Impossible to get the cab, limousine, and TNC people in one room at the same time without I didn't have enough law enforcement to control that meeting. So we brought them in one by one, one group at a time, and actually started to work out. And after about 9 months, we actually got a report. The report, you can get that off of our internet site. It's also listed as a document in AMVA's site with a recommendation for the General Assembly. I think nope, I'm exactly where I needed to be. So step one. The stakeholder process, work that, get everyone at the table, get everyone in, at least not everyone agreed to what we proposed, but not everyone disagreed. So there were winners and losers in even what we were recommending. So then we put it in front of our legislature. Interesting, the bill started moving forward, and the chairman of the Transportation Committee on the Senate side really was the one who made this happen, because he brought everyone in, and during the legislative process, the three main groups were the TNCs, the taxi cab industry, and insurance. Those were the three main heavy hitters, and so there were a number of meetings that the chairman of the committee actually had all of these folks in one room, and he said, okay, you're going to get this, you're not going to get this, and at the end of the day, we actually had a bill. We actually had our governor sign a bill. Again, not everybody thought that it was not everyone felt complete winners, but not everyone felt that there were losers either. So now, just some of the background. The TNC as a company is licensed to do business, licensed by the DMV to do business. Right now, we've got two companies. Lyft and Uber are the players in Virginia. Now, one of the big areas that we couldn't get compromise on, and so this was one of the decisions that the General Assembly just made and said, here's the way it's going to be. Clearly, Uber and Lyft did not want to do a per driver type of registration. because quite frankly, they didn't want us to have the database of their drivers for fear that somehow their competitors were going to come in and find out who their drivers were. And, we had based, because I will tell you one thing in Virginia, we're not going to do anything that we can't pay for by charging the regulated industry. We're not going to regulate at a loss to our taxpayers. So we say, okay, fine, if we can't do a per driver fee for the regulations, we'll do it on the company. So in Virginia, it's $100,000 application fee to play in Virginia. That probably explains why we only have two companies playing. Then there's a $60,000 annual fee afterwards. Now, I will tell you, probably that's going to be changed, because we said the only way that we could pay for this is if we had 5 companies come in, because we figured it was going to cost us about $500,000 to regulate. Well, with 2 companies, we are right now operating at a loss. So I think that when we go back to the General Assembly for the January 2017 session, we'll probably talk about something. Something else we want to do. Driver screening. The driver's got to be 21 years of age. They've got to have a comprehensive background check. Now ours is a name-based background check, and I know some jurisdictions do it differently. Certainly, the taxi industry wanted a fingerprint-based background check, but that was one of those compromises that we just did what the chairman of the committee told us that we were going to do on that. But you will see that is something that the taxi industry will insist on. Though I will tell you, in Virginia, you don't have background checks on every driver, every taxi cab driver in Virginia. So, in fact, what the TNCs are doing is maybe it's not as good as a fingerprint-based background check, but it's a whole lot better than what's been done in the taxi industry. As part of the background check, we've also the TNCs also have to check the individual status in the Virginia Sex Offender and Crimes Against Minor Registry and the U.S. Department of Justice National Sex Offender website. We also came up with certain barrier crimes, and obviously, an obvious one would be DWI. If you've been convicted of driving while intoxicated or driving under the influence, you cannot be a TNC driver in Virginia. And there are other certain violent crimes that everyone agreed that if you have one of these, if you've been convicted, you're not going to be able to be a TNC driver. Now, on the vehicles, as you know, the big difference between a TNC and a regular taxi cab is that the driver is driving their own vehicle. Now, we're going to require that they have proper registration. And Virginia is probably one of, and Ann can help me, probably 18 or 19 jurisdictions in the states that still require a safety inspection on the vehicle. And so, bottom line, we say your vehicle's got to be properly registered. It's got to be state inspected. Now that means even if you are licensed or plated in another state, but you want to use that vehicle in Virginia, because obviously, particularly in Northern Virginia, where Maryland, D.C., Virginia, it's all sort of one large suburb of D.C., if you bring a Maryland car in, you've got to get a Virginia safety inspection on that car. It also has to be insured by a policy providing coverage for commercial use of the vehicle, and it's got to be registered with the DMV. So again, we register the vehicle, we don't register the driver. And so you can say, well, gosh, shouldn't the owner of the vehicle be the driver? Not necessarily. I mean, if mom and dad have bought you a car that they are the registered owner, and you're driving it while you're down at one of our colleges, we don't know that, but we did require that if in fact we told the TNC, if the owner is not the driver, you have to ensure consent. And that also happens with leased vehicles, and so they have to keep the consent. They have to keep the consent on their system. we are the only state that came up with this type of approach where we want to make sure that our citizens know that this vehicle that's coming to pick them up is in fact properly registered and regulated by the Virginia DMV. I mean, one good thing about the TNCs, and I'm a true believer. Every time I travel, I use Uber or Lyft because I love the fact that I know who's driving the car. I know what his name is. I know, or her name. I know their license plate. I know the type of car. I particularly like the fact that there's an option that if, in fact, I was using an Uber to go from the airport in Richmond to my home, I can send an email forward to let everyone know that, okay, here's where I am. Here's who's driving me. Here's the car that they're driving, and here's when I'm supposed to be there. I will tell you, AMVA loves the fact that I pay by credit card. I get this wonderful receipt down to the penny that shows where I'm going, where I started, where I ended, which is much nicer than you get in a cab and you'll see one of these receipts because I had to take a cab in from the airport that just says here's what I'm telling you I paid, including the tip. So I like that. But what we require in Virginia is, and we're a 2-plate, 4-decal state. 3M loves us, but we've got a uniquely colored year decal. A black decal with gold numbers means a TNC. Otherwise, your colors are going to change every year. It's going to be a dark background with light colored letters one year and the reverse the next year. What you also see is for an out-of-state car, you've got to have that Virginia decal in the back window. So law enforcement loves it. The airport authorities love it because they know that this car is authorized to be on their property to pick up folks. So now, in Virginia, another uniquely colored decal is an orange decal with white letters that indicate you're a rental vehicle. So our compromise is to come up with an orange decal with black letters to say that you're a rental vehicle that also can be used for TNC purposes. And again, the airports are going to like it. Law enforcement's going to like it. Taxi cab people still don't like it because they think that what this will mean is that Uber will just set up some type of program where they can rent cars for their TNC partners. But that's a business relationship that we're not involved in. What we're involved in is just making sure the public knows what's going on. So, like I said, I love the fact in Virginia when I take an Uber or Lyft because I can see from that front license plate that this is the car that I want to be in. And also in Virginia, you're required to show what's called the trade dress. So if you're driving Uber, it's the big U. I'm not even sure what Lyft. I think it's a pink mustache or something. Some of the other highlights. Obviously, insurance is going to be the biggest issue. At least it was for us. I will tell you, and I learned this when I was out with Terry in Alberta. Let me back up. I will tell you, I think the TNCs have learned their lesson. And I can speak particularly for Uber, which I think Ann may, they had expressed some interest in being an associate member of AMVA, and I hope that all that paperwork is approved, and I hope that we'll see them in Williamsburg. But again, like I said at the outset, they came in and said, we're here, we're a technology company, you don't have anything to do with us. And sort of like, we're just going to bull our way through. Well, again, while we got a good package, Uber lost some things because of their attitude. And I think now they're saying, you know what? And in fact, during this process, the chairman of the Transportation Committee finally had them to admit in an open meeting that, yes, we are a motor carrier, which was although their lawyer still says, no, well, we didn't quite say it that way. And I said, well, in Virginia, you're a motor carrier because that's what the chairman of the committee heard, and that's what I heard. But now there's when they're going into a new market, I think they're a little bit more inclined to sit down with the regulators, be at the table and try to talk through what is a regulatory package that everyone can live with. And I understand that they've got that they pretty much have sort of like the insurance agreement that the TNCs like, the insurance companies like, but for us it took a lot of took a lot of time. But basically, if you're driving and you don't have the app on, your personal insurance is going to cover. But once you turn that app on, not once you accept a rider, but once the app is on, and until you drop the passenger off, that's when Uber's insurance, that's when the TNC's insurance comes in. I will also tell you, I think that because of the discussions, and Terry and I were talking about this earlier, before the TNCs were on the scene, absolutely everyone's personal car insurance policy had an exclusion for you using it for business purposes. It's in Virginia. It's called the livery exclusion. So, bottom line, your policy says you can't use this for business. Well, now most of the major insurance companies doing business in Virginia have a policy that does allow you to do that. So it's created a whole new market. And Terry says that now that they're regulating in Alberta, yes, the insurance company is sort of beating the path to their doors to start offering those policies. Those policies for them. So, like I said, I don't really need to talk a lot about the insurance because bottom line, from my understanding, there is an agreement out there with the TNCs and the and the insurance company. And it's pretty much once the app's on to the time the passengers dropped off, you're going to be covered by the Uber insurance. Now, some of the other highlights is. You got the TNC has to make sure that they're letting their TNC partners know about the limits of the the insurance coverage and when it kicks in, when it doesn't kick in. They've got to provide a credential in Virginia. They have to provide a credential to each one of their drivers, which may be displayed on the mobile app, but it has to include identifying the driver, the vehicle, and the TNC which they're affiliated. As I said, the passenger needs to know whose car they're getting into, who the driver is. And that's all required. Our law also says, and at the end, you got to provide them a detailed receipt of the travel, which is again just part of the TNC's business business mode right now. Where we had some challenge is what was going to be our ability to audit, and obviously the TNCs didn't want us to do any audits. We had law enforcement that wanted us to do everything, and so we arrived at exactly how we were going to audit, the routine audit as compared to we've had this allegation that this TNC driver acted inappropriately towards this passenger and is therefore being charged with a criminal offense. Those are the types of interaction with the company that requires a whole lot of information very quickly, and obviously it's not to the TNC's benefit to try to hide that information when there's an allegation that maybe one of their partners acted inappropriately. So those are the types of things. Now, clearly they also have to let the drivers know zero tolerance for alcohol and drug use, and also no discrimination, because clearly particularly with the disabled community, there was some concern that maybe if a TNC driver pulled up and you were standing there with your CNI dog, or you had some other type of physical disability, that they wouldn't pick you up. Or there was concerns that there might be redlining, like, okay, I live in this section of Richmond, which might not be the, might have a little higher tendency to crime than other sections, that, okay, no one's going to pick up a passenger there, or no one will take a passenger there. So we worked real hard to make sure that there was no discrimination, and that there would be compliance with the Americans with Disability Act or the Virginia with Disabilities Act. And if we find a violation, it does give us the right to immediately revoke the license for the TNC, not just the not just the driver. Some of the other highlights, street hails are prohibited. You just can't be riding down the road. I will also tell you, though, this business model continues to evolve. For instance, we understand that both Uber and Lyft are now looking at an appointment type of system, because previously currently there is no ability to say, yeah, I want an Uber tomorrow at 7 o'clock to pick me up from the hotel and take me. And I'll tell you, it took me a little time to get over that, because I am so anal that I've got things planned for weeks in advance, and it just, I like to be able to say I wanted a cab at 7:05, to pick me up and take me to wherever I want to go. I get real nervous with Uber, but I've gotten less nervous now. I pack, I go down to the lobby, and I hit the button. Because sometimes I hit that button and it says, your Uber's going to be here in 2 minutes. I was at a restaurant in Richmond going home, hit the button and said, your Uber driver's outside. They had just dropped off a passenger for this restaurant, and it turned the app back on, and boom. So yeah, you need to be ready to go on. You need to be ready to go, but yeah, still no street hails. An Uber driver can't just be riding down the road and have someone say, "Hey, pick me up and take me somewhere." And that's probably one of the biggest challenges that when you're looking at where the airport authorities fit in. That's probably one of the biggest concerns that they've got, is they want to be in control of their property, and they don't want people just sort of driving around. Now, I'll tell you what worked in Virginia is that the TNCs agreed to have their drivers geo-fenced. So if you're picking up a passenger, particularly at the Richmond airport, and I'll tell you, when you come in for AIC, if you call an Uber or Lyft, they are allowed to be in the cell phone parking lot. That's where the app works. If they're out of that parking lot and still on airport property, the signal will not work. It's working very well. Working well. The TNC drivers like it. The cabs like it, and the airport authority, the airport authorities like it. And I said, again, record keeping and reporting. We will go in and do periodic reviews, and in fact, we are required to make quarterly reports to the General Assembly. We just sent in our third quarter report on the enforcement. But the General Assembly wanted to know, we don't want you to put, they said, Rick, we don't want you to put all your enforcement efforts just on the TNCs. We want to see what's going on all motor carriers. So we're saying this is what we're finding as we're monitoring limousines. This is what we're finding as cabs are being monitored, and this is what we're finding on the TNCs. And I will tell you, the first year was pretty good, but the biggest challenge we found was that maybe sometimes the TNCs are not giving the partners as much information as they would need, and that's the biggest problem we saw is that the trade dress, the U wasn't going up in the back window for an Uber driver. But again, my thought was, well, we want that U, but the bottom line is the license plate also indicates that this is a TNC vehicle. So, but it's gone well. So now we're into stage 3, actually to implement this thing. Now the legislation was signed early. Well, the governor didn't sign the legislation until March of 2015. Well, we knew it was coming, that the legislation was coming, and we knew that we needed to start standing it up. Also in Virginia, all of our bills go into effect July 1 of the year. We knew we couldn't wait till July 1 to start up to set up the process. I will tell you, more than 180 employees were involved in doing this. 14,000 hours. There's what we're seeing the cost, to be. Now, I will tell you, I won't call this a windfall, but it was an income that we did not calculate into this formula, and that is, in addition to a criminal background check, they're required to do a Virginia DMV background check, and I'm not sure if we've got this on the slide or not, but we're over 100,000 drivers at this point. So that's 100,000 times times what we charge. I think we charge $7 for this type of DMV check. So we hired additional people. 3 people went into the headquarters work unit, and then 3 additional people went into our law enforcement cadre. We've got 70 sworn officers that are again involved in all sorts of motor carrier, enforcement. Clearly, we couldn't start until July. We couldn't wait until July 1 to start issuing these decals. So we actually started in June and told people they could walk into one of our 74 customer service centers and get the decals. They could order it online, mail or fax. Where the bulk of it came from was working with Uber and Lyft to actually have the request electronically transmitted. Some bumps in the road because of some interfacing of technology, but that is now the easiest way. Everyone likes to do it. They just say, here's a list of vehicles that you need to send decals out on, and we're able to move on it. Okay, now I'm going to. From this point on, because I lost my notes last night and I thought I had the full thing, but I only got 17 pages of that, so I'm going to apologize. I'm going to just look at the screen and tell you what I think I need to be saying on this. Well, okay, there we go. 108,000 cars registered. Quite a bit more than we thought because originally Uber and Lyft, and again, like I said, they are so secretive on even the number. Because I remember as we started registering the vehicles, the press wanted to know where these vehicles were. Well, we, as part of our quarterly report, we have it broken down by county and city in Virginia. And Uber went apoplectic. They're saying, you're telling our competition where our drivers live. No, we're telling you in Fairfax County, that we've got most of we've got a lot of drivers. That's all we're saying. Now, interestingly, so back up. So Uber and Lyft said, we anticipate that you will, at the peak, have 20,000 drivers. We had 20,000. We had 20,000 the first month. We had 23,000 the first month. Now, I will tell you, some of these folks, and again, the beauty of these TNCs is you could have a driver that's working 3 hours a week, or you could have a driver that this is their full time. I mean, I've had drivers across the country, but I had one in Virginia Beach, retired military. And this guy said, after a month at home being retired, my wife said, "You've got to get out of here. You got to find something to do." So he says, "I drive, 3-4 hours a day, and if I want to, if I don't want to, I don't." Because again, at least in Virginia, under our interpretation of labor laws, these drivers are independent contractors. They're not employees. They're not told, "Here's where you operate. Here's when you operate. Here's how you operate." So we were sort of amazed that We had this. Also sort of amazed that we had more out-of-state than in-state. And every one of the 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, we have licensed. So we've got a TNC driver from Alaska and one from Hawaii. I think they're primarily here in Virginia for college. And again, primarily in the urban areas. Now, interesting concept here that we are following and want to drill down more and more. But we are finding a little bit of a trend, and I know that Uber and MAD did a great survey out in California with the DMV out there, where they're finding a noticeable decrease in drunk driving offenses in those urban areas where you've got where you've got a TNC operating. Our numbers are showing the same thing. Because, quite frankly, I think we've got more responsible passengers now, because it is so easy. Because again, not in Nova Scotia, because y'all don't have Uber drivers here. But if we were sitting in Richmond, or when y'all are sitting in Williamsburg, you hit that app, you're going to see their cars all over the place, and you're going to wait probably 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes to get picked up at a bar to be taken safely home. So we're finding people are making better choices, and I hope we can document this, and I hope this trend continues. But again, there's the link to the MAD and Uber study that was done out with Gene Shiamoto out in California. Okay, as I said, this business model keeps changing, and in fact, this last session of our General Assembly, Uber went and got some budget language, which has the impact of law, obviously, to allow the TNCs to also move property. Now, I will tell you that what the market they're looking for, they're not going to be like household movers. They're not going to be moving large things. They're not going to put UPS, U-Haul out of business, but they've got a partnership with a very large grocery chain up in Northern Virginia, and if you call this grocery chain or go online and order your groceries, Uber now can pick it up, can pick your groceries up and deliver them to you. Listen, I don't know how the business model is going to work. I like picking out my own meat. I like looking at the fruit and tapping the melon to make sure everything's done. Now, an interesting discussion that I had with Uber, and in Virginia, liquor is regulated by the state, and you can only purchase spirits through a state store. You can buy beer and wine at a grocery store. We issue temporary authority to say that the driver, if you've ordered a 6-pack of beer or a bottle of wine from this grocery store, the driver can move that. Because ABC has a way to regulate that and to license that company to do that. Now, temporary authority was issued. We're still in the process now of coming up with a permanent fix that will go into the code. And quite frankly, it's a business that's been going on, particularly in Northern Virginia, for quite some time. You've got Dinner Taxi, and you got all of these companies which currently are working with restaurants that you can call and say, yeah, bring me my favorite spaghetti dish from this Italian restaurant. And so technically in Virginia, they're a motor carrier. And they need to be regulated. So we want to, sort of regulate down some of that. Okay.